I'd like to call to order and welcome the audience to the October 16, 2017 Nelson District Overlay Review Team meeting. Roll call, please, Christie.
Mr. Guy Brain,
Here.
Mr. Chris Landry,
Here.
Mr. Dennis Scott,
Here.
Mr. Jim Forshey,
Here.
and Mr. Kyle Lane.
Here.
Thank you, Christie. We'll go to item 3. This is a 5-member review team. It will take a majority of those members present to grant or deny any request heard tonight. The meeting will be conducted with me reading the request from the agenda. The planning staff will give the presentation and report their recommendations. If the applicant would like to add to the staff's presentation, or if someone from the audience has comments related to the agenda item, please come to the microphone and state your name, address, and nature of your request. All persons wishing to speak other than the applicant need to fill out a blue request to appear form located in the back of this room. The form must be given to a staff member prior to reading the agenda item. Please turn off your cell phone and pagers. And with that, we will go to item 4. Take appropriate action on 0V-0917-0002, a request by Palmer Properties Investment LLC for a major alternative design request to enlarge the boundary of the Nelson Road Overlay District to establish uses not permitted in Section 1 to deviate the property development standards and to deviate from the landscaping standards in the 5,000 block of Nelson Road in Ward 3. I will entertain a motion to approve the request with stipulations.
So moved.
Motion to discuss.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Landry. Ms. Wallace.
And I apologize in advance, but this is a big project and there's a lot of detail, so I'm going to read everything for the record if y'all don't mind.
We got all night.
The property encompasses nearly 17 acres of vacant land that's zoned both light commercial in the Nelson Overlay District and single-family residential. If tonight's requests are approved, the developer is going to purchase the land to construct a retail center. The development will consist of 8 buildings, 6 of which will be on the main tract with the other 2 buildings on outlots. To facilitate this development as proposed within the Nelson Overlay District, a number of alternative requests will need approval. The first one is that the applicant is requesting to extend the district an additional 366 feet to the east to include the entire tract to be developed. The next is that because this section of the district limits uses to business and professional offices, institutions, churches, and parks, the establishment of retail uses necessitates approval by the review team. If approved, the proposed uses would include a grocery store to be the center anchor, restaurants, including fast food and drive-through, and any other commercial uses typically found within shopping centers. The applicant is requesting a number of deviations from property development standards. For the architectural theme, the applicant plans to use a prototype design for the grocery anchor with the facades on the adjacent spaces to be a complementary postmodern style with traditional elements. Alternatives are requested for the roof pitch and roofing material. The applicant indicates a hardship in meeting the pitch requirement due to the large scale of the various buildings and proposes the overall structural roofing material to be low slope membrane. Regarding walkways, the applicant requests that crosswalks be painted or striped and that a canopy over the main entrance of the anchor building be the only weather protection to extend to the parking area. On signage, the applicant requests that each leased space be allowed to install a wall sign. For lighting, the applicant feels increasing the height will provide a safer environment. On pole lighting, 25 to 30 feet is requested. For lights mounted on the facades, an average height of 10 feet is requested. And the applicant has indicated a hardship in providing the required street yard plantings, as much of the setbacks along Nelson Road and Ham Reed Road serve as the location of various utilities. To compensate for the lack of tree material along the road frontage, the applicant proposes including the required trees within the development. And the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following stipulations: that the development adhere to the site plan on file, provided that the director may authorize adjustments in light of technical or engineering considerations, that a drainage impact analysis and a traffic impact analysis be required unless appropriate waivers are granted by the Division of Engineering, that all exterior lighting must be oriented inward toward the development or structures to minimize intrusion onto surrounding properties, that all luminaires must be fully shielded to direct light downward, that the landscape plan must be approved prior to issuance of a development permit, and that the landscape for the initial development area must be installed prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace.
Mr. Bryan, Mr. Chairman,
Um,
hold on one second, please.
Go ahead,
Before you
Mr. Bryan.
discuss. This is not English. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, good. All right, at this time, I guess I'll have the applicant come up and do your presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
State your name and
Oh,
address
sorry.
for the record.
Jason Eisenberg, 2710 East Camelback Road, Suite 210, Phoenix, Arizona, 85016. And again, I appreciate your time. I know everybody's busy, and I appreciate you guys taking your nights to be a part of this hearing. I also appreciate staff work up to this point. We've had several meetings up to now to hopefully refine this to where it's a product that we can all be happy with for this area. I wanted to just give a quick background of our company, myself, as well as introduce the project, and kind of go through a few of the issues that have come up, and then sit back. We have our team here, our architect and engineer, that can answer any technical questions you may have. Again, my name is Jason Eisenberg, Eisenberg Company. We are a company that was started in 1946 by my grandfather. We primarily build grocery-anchored shopping centers throughout the western United States. We built everything from Walmarts to Safeways to Sprouts, so kind of across the board. Currently, in Louisiana, we have a project in Baton Rouge we just broke ground on. It's a Rouse's anchored shopping center. And I wanted to bring that up because let you know that we do have a vested interest in the state of Louisiana. We are here quite a bit. We're not flying in and flying out. We spend a lot of time here and care about the quality of the development that we're putting forward. So a little bit about this project. It's approximately 91,000 square feet, grocery-anchored shopping center, 4 out-parcel pads, shop space, mid-box space, as well as restaurant spaces, plazas for patios and community attractions. One of the challenges on the site, as I'm sure you guys know, is there's power lines that basically run the property, which limited our ability to adequately landscape the project, how we would typically landscape a project along the perimeter. So we did try to be thoughtful about what we do with obviously increasing the amount of trees within the project, but also do things that hopefully bring a community element to it without necessarily being over landscaping. So we mentioned a dog park along Ham Reed, things that actually engage the community and make it more of an experience than just a kind of your standard shopping center. We did try to meet the landscaping requirements. As far as the drainage requirements and things like that, I understand that there's a new ordinance that may or may not be passed here in the next couple months. I just spoke to our engineer. He just got the download on it, and we will be able to meet that requirement. So if it is increased, we will be able to handle that. Further, we did increase some of the comments that came out of staff's recommendation was to increase the landscaping along the residential component, which we complied with, to hopefully be good neighbors there. The only thing I will bring up is 2 of the pads on the northern side of the property that are fast food, shown as fast food, are conceptual. So when a recommendation is given, I would hope to have some leniency. That could turn out to be a bank. That could turn out to be a little more shops. I don't want to say they're placeholders, but it's not set in stone exactly what that's going to be. As far as phasing of the project, ideally, perfect world, we would build this in one phase. That being said, I don't think it behooves the parish or us to build vacant buildings. So we will gauge how we build it based on leasing. That being said, the preliminary conversations we've had with tenants, seeing how Kroger's done up the street and just the overall general vacancy, lack of good vacancy rate in the area, we feel confident in our ability to lease it, and we feel confident that with a quality grocer tenant we have, that we'll be able to get the project leased. And I can answer some of the questions on the overlay as far as why we're sliding it back. I think it makes more sense than going through a complete rezoning process. I think the addition of some of the retail uses within that district makes sense for what we're trying to do here. The other comment about the overall architectural theme, we had conversations very early in this process about how we have to stick to the French provincial theme. I think that when the Nelson Overlay District was first created, it was more of an office park and medical park component. And when you look at how retail sits and the sign bands you need and certain elements that we're gonna have to get any sort of leasing activity, that's where we needed to kind of deviate and try to keep it in line, but make it a little more retail centric. And further, our grocery tenant has requirements and prototypes, and we wanted to hopefully mirror that so it looks like one cohesive project and not have 4 buildings that don't really match what's going on behind it. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have. Again, our architect and engineering team is here. So if you get technical, I can defer to them.
Okay, Jason, thank you. Mr. Scott?
I'll try to stay away from the technical right now. Let's just talk about some of the other things. When you talk about phasing, let's narrow that down.
Sure.
Just the Rouse's building right now, and how are
No.
you gonna, so when you say phasing, tell me a little bit about what you plan on doing right now.
So perfect world, I'd build the whole thing at once.
Yeah.
But my crystal ball broke in 2007. So ideally it'd be everything adjacent to the Rouses and a out parcel building or two. When I talk about phasing, if we sold a pad to a bank, for example, they may be lagging and behind our development process. If leasing on the shops goes so well that we find a need for more shops, that would lag behind the initial development process. So economically, I couldn't buy 17 acres and just build the Rouses. So we would have to have some massing out front. It's economies of scale in both development, costing, all that good stuff. So I would say initially we'd build, again, the majority of the stuff attached to the Rouses, hopefully an out parcel pad or both of them. And then the phasing would be the pads that we don't necessarily control. They're a little more conceptual at this point.
So the large buildings to the back, you feel that's going to be built? That is phase 1. Are you gonna leave off one of those, or?
I do, like, for example, the shop building all the way to the north, if there was struggles leasing that, and I could just go ahead and build the 2 buildings out front, I'd go that route. But I think your fear would be that there's just a Rouse's sitting here with a bunch of vacant dirt around it, and that's not our intention.
To start the whole construction process again, instead of just a small piece?
Yeah, you lose your economies of scale. If you have one general conditions as you're out there building, you have one trailer, one contractor building it. For me to just do that again for a 10,000 square foot building, my per square foot building costs go up considerably.
All the parking lots, the majority of the parking lots, all the landscaping on the exterior, that's all still going to be phase 1?
That would all be phase 1, yes.
All right. That's
Some
all I
of
have.
the, I'm sorry to interrupt, some of the landscaping within those pads would lag based on what those pads actually end up being. But the exterior landscaping, so all the trees that buffer it to the north, the retention ponds, obviously we'd have to put in, the trees around it, everything on Ham Reed and Nelson would go in, as well as the parking lot and all associated landscaping.
One last question for you, because since you brought it up, you talk about building a lot on the west side of the United States, and I know their zoning requirements are quite heavy in a lot of those places, but you do manage to build in those places, correct? With the strict regulations and all that, so we don't have to worry about this falling apart on our discussion tonight. I mean, trying to get this right.
Yeah, no, absolutely,
Okay.
no, and quite honestly, we want to build a project that you guys are happy with. I mean, it doesn't behoove us to come in here and jam something down your throats and no one's happy with it. I mean, there's an economic reality we have to live with. But but, open to discussion on whatever you guys want to talk about, architecturally, landscaping, all that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Crane,
Yes, sir.
on these two outbuildings that he mentioned that he wasn't sure exactly what it was going to be, it could change according to what the need is. What can it not be? I mean, are the rules of the overlay district going to keep a bar from going in there or else whatever else? I could think of a lot of other things, some of which I probably better not say, but, I mean, so basically, what can it not be? I mean, is he going to be limited?
Yes, he'll be limited.
Okay.
Yes.
It's something that's not addressed in the overlay district, he would have to come back here before
Yes, sir.
again to do that.
Yes,
So,
sir.
more than likely, and I think, it's going to be retail, restaurant, it'll be something along those lines, I'm sure.
Yeah, and then we're going to have CC&Rs on the property as well, and our grocery tenant is very specific on it as far as obnoxious uses,
Right.
billiard
I would
halls,
hope so.
things we're not going to mention here that we can't do.
Okay.
So this is going to be a neighborhood grocery anchored center.
That's all for now, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from you applicants?
No, we're very excited about this project. I know our grocery tenant's very excited about this project, so, we're hoping we have a favorable outcome.
So,
Go ahead, Mr. Scott.
so do we want to go back through they're requesting real quick, each one, just to make sure we're clear on it before we get into the technicals? I know you,
That was a long list. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't remember half of what you said.
so, it's all right, maybe you can just wait a minute
Yeah.
while she reads out one, and if we have a specific one? All right,
Well,
Yeah, that's a good
let's
idea.
relax.
The first bullet is to expand the district 366 feet to the east,
That's not a problem.
and you should have maps in your packets. The second is to expand the uses to include retail. And then we get into the more detailed, the property development standards. First is the architectural theme. And then, you want me to just keep going?
Well, let's,
You wanna stop
let's stop at the architectural since let's get technical since we're gonna start
Okay.
chopping it up a little bit. Your neighbor across the street's already went above and beyond to get that a certain way and make sure that he kept the integrity of what staff and himself and the jurors and the overlay district we decided would be great there and would complement everything. So I would like to see those 4 buildings out front. Now, I know you might have to do a little of adjusting decorative on your Rouse's building or some of the things to maybe pull it to those buildings. But I would like to see all outbuildings reflect the integrity of the overlay district and must be approved by planning and development before the construction. So basically not a blank check tonight. I would like to see those 4 buildings at least try to get to where the overlay district now sits so that, the guy across the street doesn't feel like, he's been thrown under the bus and he did everything he could. And I think it's just the right thing to do. So that's open for discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is there any discussion on it?
I would agree.
So I would put that
Do
in.
you have any comments, Jason?
Yeah, and again, generally, I guess my hands are a little tied in the fact that our grocer has a prototype that just is what it is, kind of thing. As far as the architecture across the street, it's a lot of brick, it's a lot of stucco. It's things like that we're fine incorporating. Where we get into a little bit of bind with the French provincial type is it really goes office and medical, and it doesn't really provide clean surfaces for signage and retail. So if what we're talking about is we can add brick, we can add stucco, we can kind of mirror some of those concepts. I could generally agree to that. Again, as we get into it, we'd have to, get Mr. Verger up here and talk about it. But it's just, if you want me to go kind of 2-story look, or if you want me to get into the pitched roof side of things, that's where it loses its retail feel and it becomes hard to lease, which is the problem.
Well, he had some major design changes also, so, we're just looking for something that's not totally contrary to what's across the street, and so I think we can come to an agreement.
Okay, yeah.
But to just write a blank check tonight would be a little uncomfortable for me, so, And I think it is kind of vague when we've all discussed that back and forth, but I think you hire great architects and some people with some good visions, and, you know, I think we could probably come to something that would make everybody happy. Good.
Mr. Crane?
Well, I was just going to say, without, trying to design his buildings tonight, I do agree, maybe the architect can come up and have some suggestions too, but I think, I think what we're trying to get to, and maybe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just materials and things like that, some of the proportioning of the buildings, that's kind of what we're looking for. Complementary colors, those types of things, is that
I mean,
sort of in line?
We just want it to kind of blend, not look like the guy across the street, but kind of keep a conformity.
Yeah, and again, if we're talking about, for lack of a better word, the gingerbread on it, the brick and the stucco and some of those
Yeah.
materials, I think we can. The question back, I guess, is how do we go through that process without opening it up to another public forum? Is that just something we can agree to?
Well, that's something Mr. Crane has the ability to look at that. I mean, because we're not approving it. We know what the ordinance says. I mean, or would you rather the board actually have to look at it?
Well, I'm not sure what they're going to look like right now.
I know that.
And so the issue would be you asking for them to do something to meet that requirement in the ordinance. And so that's what we're going to review for.
Let me
And
read
so
it again.
I'm sorry?
Let me read my
Okay.
motion one more time, and I think I gave you the power after this to look at it. I mean, you do a good job of it, so I don't want them to have to come back and sit through this. It said outbuildings to reflect integrity of the overlay district and must be approved by planning and development before construction. So, I mean, you've been working with them to this point to get some of the landscaping and that, so I mean.
Well, yes, I have, Ms. Scott. I have been working with them, and they have obliged us in terms of the landscape, and they're going to meet the landscape requirement. But I do have something to go by in the ordinance that says, here's what you have to do. Now, the architecture is a little bit different in the fact that I don't know at this point what that's going to look like, and you don't either. And none of the people in the public know that. So I'm not sure if I would be open to, saying on your motion, me having the power to look at that, because I don't know at this point. So it's up to y'all how you want to handle it, those particular buildings out front. And I guess that's why we're here to discuss it.
Well, if we pass the major changes and we're allowing them on all of the buildings, but I'm putting a stipulation saying the front ones need to be reviewed so that they have some continuity with our overlay district. I mean, we've already allowed the major changes. You're not going to have to rule on those, correct?
Well, what you're acting on tonight is based on the plan that they submitted to us, those drawings that you received. That's what we're voting on, or that's what you're voting on tonight. And so they're having to make those modifications. That's what, the staff has reviewed, is based on the plan that they submitted. Those were the requested modifications, and those are the things that you have to modify. So, in other words, on the building that they're asking you to modify, they're asking you to, there's no pitch on that roof. It is a flat type roof, with a membrane, with parapet, with a parapet around the front and with a facade. And so, again, I don't know what those four buildings out in the front are going to look like. I don't know whether they're going to be similar in design to that or not.
So,
Now, two of them, Jason, and if I can ask him,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
is the two that are not the out parcels, those would be the ones that y'all would.
It would be our intent to build those, and I'm just throwing out an idea here, is maybe what we do is, and I don't know how this would get approved, but maybe we come up with a pre-approved material palette that we basically say, this brick, this stucco, and we did this in another project because, for example, if we do sell an out parcel to a bank,
Yeah.
then those material palettes carry over in our purchase agreement, and they know what they're bound by. So, it's generally speaking, it'll have, and again, I'm just going off my memory of the project next door, but it's mostly brick and stucco components on that building. So we could look at that and say, we'll have, where we do use block and stone and those type of elements, instead we'll use this brick, this stucco, so that it'll generally conform across the street. As the building lays out and as you move in tenants, walls change, parapets change, you move things to fit tenants. And as we sell it, the fast food becomes a bank, or as we ground lease it, it morphs. But if we have maybe a pre-approved materials palette where it's, we can use this brick, we can use this stucco, that gives the feel of that French provincial that I think you guys are going for in those 4 parcel buildings. Then, as it gets built and the styles of buildings are built to meet the tenant's needs, at least there'll be a uniform look on them.
Still have the floor.
Yeah.
Mr. Crane, is that something you feel can work in this situation?
I think so. And I don't particularly have a problem with that. I'm just looking, if you look at the sheet in your packet that has the elevations in it. This is But what he's showing, or what the architect is showing. You don't have it? Yeah. Again, this is awkward.
You good?
So what he's showing here in this elevation, he is showing, some brick, treatment, stucco treatment with some type of finish work, okay? And, which is nice. And he has, a lot of glazing on the front and with fixtures. This has more of a contemporary feel to it. And if he can, if he maintains the style, if that's how if y'all are okay with that, I'm okay with that too. Again, this has there's no pitched roof here.
Mm-hmm.
So the buildings across the street, they do have some roofing material that's pitched. It didn't meet the ordinance, as you well know. They had to get a variance for that. But they do have some, asphalted shingle type roofing. It's not all flat. So whether they can incorporate that into those other out parcel buildings because they're smaller, it's hard to make that work here.
Mhm.
I understand that. But in those other buildings, the out parcel where it's smaller, maybe you can get some of that. I don't know. I just don't know.
I think the potential is definitely there.
Yeah.
It's like Jason's saying, if it's more of a.
State your name.
Stephen Viggory, Duplantis Design Group, 314 East Bayou Road in Thibodaux, Louisiana. In relation to the use has a lot to do with
It
that.
does.
Because a lot of times in the retail world, it's longer spans.
Yeah.
Which means longer roof slopes, which means an 8-on-12 slope gives you a 30, 40-foot high roof. Those are the kind of things we have to try and stay away from. We can take some of those components and do them as canopy bump outs or signage components and kind of mimic some of those things. And from that standpoint, once we know what some of these uses are, we can come up with schematics just like this that we know that you guys are going to be happy with.
And I'm, Mr. Scott, I'm comfortable with that, with them coming up with those kind of schematics, to see if they can bring in some of those components, in the ordinance, and having some sort of material board that they would show,
We're good with that.
So then actually the motion that I made, then you can, as long as you're comfortable with what they're saying, that motion pretty much says planning and development, keep the integrity. That's all. I didn't get specific. So if you're comfortable with what they're saying, and
Just say.
because that's what you just told
Okay,
me.
Mr. Scott.
That's what you just told me, so that's what I want to hear. I like somebody to be confident when you tell me something. I'm like, you got it, awesome, yes.
Let me, Mr. Scott, let me see what Ms. Wallace, go
All
ahead.
right.
I was just going to suggest that we maybe add on that he has the authority to kick it over to you if he feels that ultimately, you guys need to approve
The
it.
kick the can motion?
Well, if he feels like it's out of his bounds, or, you know.
If they're not doing it, I'm gonna kick the
Are you done? Go to Mr. Porsche.
I just want to make the comment that I think specifying the materials, the exterior materials, would make me feel comfortable. I mean, just in driving through other cities with very high restrictions in similar areas, you see different architectural styles.
Oh, yeah.
But as long as they're complementing the other development across the street, I think it's possible to, you know, like you're saying, incorporate some details of the French provincial. But for me, I don't feel like it's absolutely necessary for that verbiage to be in our decision. I feel like as long as it complements and it's a great-looking building and using similar materials, it's okay that it's not an exact match architecturally for me.
I think that's better from our perspective, and I think also that fits in the fabric of that corridor
I do.
better. There's not a lot of good examples of French Provincial along that corridor.
agree.
And I think we can still do good architecture that fits that site.
Thank you, Mr. Porsche. Mr. Landry.
I think we're good.
I think so.
I mean, you,
Mr.
you-
Landry.
you know what we're looking for.
You always tell me that.
You should
Mr. Landry.
be, you really ought to be an engineer because you're very hesitant on making any kind of.
Well, the only,
But you know what he's talking about.
the only hesitation is that if somebody disagrees with that in the general public, it's not me making that decision.
They can blame us. That's what we're here for.
That's why I said I'll kick it back to y'all.
Okay.
But I think it's gonna look nice, so it should be
I
fine.
think so, too.
Mr. Scott.
All right, so now we're gonna have to go to the main building. So as long as we're talking about the brick, and so when we get to your main building, from Ham Reed Road, those areas, are we talking painted concrete, or are you gonna have the brick wrap around? I mean, what is, because we could see the front of it, but we don't see the sides, and of course, they're very visible, so I'm just, what are we actually wrapping the buildings with? What are we proposing?
Yeah,
What I guess I'll say is, the first thing is, I can't necessarily speak on that. I'm not Rouse's architect.
Just come to the microphone.
Um,
I can show you some, you want me to?
well, so yes, there's a prototype there. But I think important to note, though, that because of our restrictions along Ham Reed and on Nelson on what we can plant, we are planting a forest behind this thing and to the north to shield it from the neighbors. So really, the only possible thing that you could see would be the patio of the southernmost building, which, again, we've designed to be a restaurant patio, so hopefully it's cool, it's got a very engaging community feel to it. And really what we've tried to do is just, and you can see it from that plan, I mean, really just landscape the heck out of the rear of the building and the northern side of the building. So, you know, you don't get to see the back of this thing. You know, there will be, you know, Rouse's is the back of a grocery store. You know, the back of shop space is the back of the building. It will be painted, it will be nice looking, but it's not going to be four-sided architecture that you typically see on street front buildings. And to hopefully mitigate that, we've really tried to plant a lot of trees behind this. So when you're looking at it, you're looking through 2, 3, 4 sets of trees across a retention basin, or on the case to the north, you're looking across a canal, through a line of trees, through a very treed parking lot at the shopping center. So, you know, hopefully you're not going behind the grocery store unless you're taking out the garbage.
Would it be too much to ask on the far north and on the far south, just those small walls to be bricked around or whatever, to
Yeah, yeah.
be complementary to the rest of the building?
Yeah, so
And
so
not
on
just-
that,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
it
I see it on
It
here. I
is.
mean, I see what you're doing here, and that's what it looks like is happening. I just want to make sure.
is. So
Yeah.
on the south side and on the north side, that will absolutely, so we actually.
Public side.
Yeah, on the public side. So we're actually
Okay.
planning for a patio. Hopefully it's a restaurant. It'll have glass line. It'll look nice. It's not just gonna be a block wall and that's what you see coming in. Because hopefully there's opportunity for signage and other things like that the tenant's gonna want to utilize and make part of their design.
You do know we just have to ask because how vague our
I
ordinances
get
are,
it.
so.
No, absolutely. Anything that people will actually see and supposed to be driving by or looking at from Ham Reed or for any of the parking spaces, we will make look like part of the shopping center. It won't be an afterthought.
The back of the, so all of the equipment on top of the roofs from the back, you won't see any of that? That's all to be screened? That's part of the overlay district that you're
I
asking
don't
to?
think it would be intentionally, again, relative to the Rouse's stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna speak on that, but things on the roof would be screened by
Yeah,
trees.
come to the microphone, Lisa.
Are you saying from the back or from the front?
From the back of the building, it is required in the overlay district, which you are expanding, that no equipment be shown. So you would have to screen any equipment on the back of these roofs. I know you're saying the trees are gonna cover that, but, I mean, I don't know. That's
HVAC?
ACs and well,
If you put that on top of the roofs, I don't know.
Yeah, so the question is, if we put the AC on the top of the roof, will the AC unit be screened on the top of the roof? I don't know the answer to that.
I think it's difficult.
Come to the
do.
microphone.
It's something that's difficult to do relative to the sight lines. It depends on how close the residences are. If they're far away, then it's a short parapet does it. If they're a little bit closer, then it's a little bit different issue. The trees will help screen that for sure. As far as constructing building elements, I think it would get very costly to do those kind of things.
So I guess, is it in the ordinance do you have to screen it when you're right up next to it, or is it from the nearest residence?
Is it in the ordinance?
yeah, the screening, I'm sure, is in the ordinance as far as no equipment
We
can
can
be.
do a sight line
so,
study at
Yeah.
that time. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, and it may be that.
Because at this point in time, I guess the actual heights of these buildings is not determined based on the use. Some of them may be deeper than others.
Come to the microphone.
Sorry.
Um,
We're bad at this.
I guess at this point in time, we're not sure what some of these uses are. The depths of these buildings may be different, so that changes the height. So what we can do is a sightline study at that time and show you exactly what would be able to be visible based on what the tenant makeup is.
And again, it may be something, depending on their sightline study, that it's a limited,
It might just be,
screening
exactly.
that you have to do to bring
One
the
area.
parapet up, or, something that, and I think that would be an acceptable way to handle that.
Well, I know it's in the ordinance, so it's pretty clear.
It is.
So as long as anything that's, we dealt with it on the other project, so, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Scott. Any other members? Have any other concerns or questions? Discussion? Jennifer?
Oh, I wasn't really asking to speak,
Are we done with all the?
but we're going back to our bullets? Okay,
Yeah.
so.
Try to get us done, we might need.
So we discussed the architectural theme, roof pitch, roofing material, the walkways, that crosswalks be painted or striped. The ordinance calls for, I believe, alternate materials, pavers, things like that. And that a canopy be over the main entrance of the anchor building only, which, if you recall, the intent of the ordinance was more medical facilities where you may have the covered walkway for people that are in wheelchairs and things like that. Well, now that this is a different facility, they're just asking for the covered canopy right there at the anchor, the grocery store. And then the signage, they're requesting that each lease space be allowed to install a wall sign, which you guys approved for Oak Crossing as well. And then on the lighting, their pole lighting, they would prefer to have 25 to 30 feet, which the ordinance says 18 is the maximum height of the pole lights. And then on the mounted lights, they're requesting an average of 10 feet rather than the 7 feet that's in the ordinance.
Go ahead, Mr. Lambert.
All right, tell us about the light. We don't want that light going off-site. Is it still going to stay there, or?
Well, we put a stipulation that it could not bleed over into the neighbors, and also we requested that the lights be shielded. So the light is directed down.
That extra 3 foot isn't going to matter.
Oh, you mean on the,
I think
Yeah.
he wanted it higher.
Well, the pole lights would be higher than 3 feet,
Yeah,
but they do,
Thought
and
it was
they
7
can
to 10.
probably, 7 to 10 is
That's
mounted on the walls.
Mounted wall lights.
Oh, okay.
And the reason we're asking for
But
higher
7 would
lights
Be very
is,
low, yeah.
is you get fewer of them, so you don't have poles littering your
Right.
parking field. Yeah.
But it'll stay on the property. I mean, that's the
Oh,
big
yeah.
thing. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
What else, Jennifer? I hate to ask you to repeat that last, but you said like about 6 different
I
things.
know.
write it down.
Walkways, crosswalks painted or striped.
Okay. Yeah, the walkways, which I'm sure that's to try to cut costs, but I mean, obviously, a walkway that has brick or paver,
That's across the parking lot areas.
Yes,
so it's out, we're talking about in the parking lot?
yes.
Well, yeah, that would probably be kind of extreme. I guess they don't need to do that.
So anywhere there's a crosswalk, here, here, those would be painted instead of brick.
I don't know what you think about that. You look excited.
Paint them like brick.
Yeah, paint them like brick. How about that?
Crosswalks in the parking lots.
Or bricklayer's gonna go out of business.
You stamp.
And what was
So,
the other piece?
Crosswalks, weather protection to extend to the parking area, signage, wall signs on the lease space, and then the lighting.
Okay.
And the last bullet is the landscape, but we'll finish this one before we.
Mr. Scott?
All right. I think we just spent $250,000 to put pavers on our roundabout to make that corner look really great. So I'm not gonna hold you to the pavers in the little crosswalk areas, but it sure would blend well, I'm just saying. When we start talking about the lighting, the one word that you said in there that I did like was downward, because I've run into a problem before where it was stay on site, and it got a little, how do we define that? So downward is the word that I like, so that's in this ordinance, that's in, okay, I can live with that. Let's go to the driveway right quick, since I think the landscape's the last thing. The freight driveway that you have 2 driveways exiting the property on Ham Reed Road. The main driveway for customers, not a big deal. The one that leaves the back of the property for freight, I would like to see that driveway designed as a one-way going west only out, because we've had lots of problems with Ham Reed Road and 18-wheelers on it, and, you know, it's just not designed for that and all the residential traffic there. So is that something you would be all right with doing?
Yeah, we can make that right turn only. Is that what you're saying?
Right
Trucks-
turn only,
Trucks,
to the
right turn
west.
only kind of thing. So you don't want trucks going through the neighborhood, is
You're
as long as
correct.
they can get out to Nelson, we're good.
Well, that's great. So that would be in the form of a motion number 2 would be, or stipulation that the freight driveway to be one-way, right-hand turn to the west only.
Got that.
I would have a second.
Sure, I'll second
Go ahead,
that.
Mr.
When he's
Manager.
done.
And I'm done. The last thing would be drainage, but we'll
Well,
talk about that
yeah,
later.
that's actually, that's my last
Oh,
thing.
okay.
It should have been the first thing, but,
Well,
Mr. Connor is
I'm Mr.
going. to-
Crane.
Yo, I know who you are. You're Mr. Crane. That's a whole nother story. We won't get into that. Anyway, he's gonna look at this. I mean, he'll check this out and approve it.
Engineering?
Right.
Oh, yes, sir.
He has not at this time, but he
No.
will.
Oh, no.
And he's gonna make sure and make us feel warm and fuzzy that those detention ponds are big enough.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully, they're oversized.
Well, Mr. Scott has already made the motion
That
that it
request,
has to
yeah.
be,
Well, I'm gonna put it
Because
in,
that
I'm gonna
lateral,
put
I
it in
know
the
you've
stipulation
had a
in
lot of
second,
problems with
so.
that lateral already. We certainly don't want to add to them.
All right, go, Mr. Scott.
All right, then, since we're gonna talk drainage, let's get it out the way. So you already know we're, even since day one, we've been talking that neighborhood, they need,
Yes.
you know, they don't need any other problems.
Yep.
They've already given you what we are proposing in the future, and y'all believe that it shouldn't be any issue. Y'all can meet that, what we're proposing.
Yeah, so anything we do will improve the current situation because we'll actually detain it on site. It won't just run off into the creek behind us. And our first meeting, it floods the neighborhood to the south of us. So anything we do will be an upgrade. What we're currently designing is for the current standards, and what our engineer has is what I think is possibly going to be approved, and we went through it quickly, and it can accommodate that as well. So it is being engineered to the new standards that you guys will have.
All right, then in stipulation number 3, I'm just going to put it in there as a stipulation that your DIA to reflect proposed ordinance changes to Chapter 26 to include detention to a 25-year design. And so that's basically where we're at on that.
This goes over my head. I want to make sure our engineers on board
But
with
Bo's coming up, he's.
Okay.
Just state your name and address, please, sir.
Bo Barbera, 8352 Blue Mountain Boulevard, Baton Rouge. I guess my question to that would be, proposed kind of leaves it open-ended. When would that be approved, and when, what could we put restricting on that?
If this fails, I'm still wanting this standard for your development. Because it's that necessary in that neighborhood and that area. So what I'm saying is what we're proposing, that standards, that's why I use the word to reflect proposed ordinance changes, not if we pass it, propose. So what he sent you to, and y'all said you think you can get there, I want to make sure that neighborhood and all of them in that area and your development is protected.
Understood. So I guess if that drags out 6 months, will we be held to the draft ordinance now, or?
What you're reading right now is what I am putting as a stipulation. That's our requirement just for you today, which is what he asked you to go to.
So I guess why he's being hesitant is if,
He's like, "Well,
yeah.
ain't ready yet."
Yeah, get out of here. As of today, so like, I think his fear is we agree to the proposed, and then somebody else gets a handle on the ordinance, and it goes up another 75%. So as long as it's as of proposed of December. Today.
2 days date. You
We can
put-
meet that, yes.
Okay.
What is on the internet today that he has directed you to? That is what we are proposing.
2007.
The few changes that might come along are only going to make it easier. It's nothing that would affect what we're asking you
No,
to do.
we can comply to what's been proposed as of
Awesome.
today, just so long as it doesn't.
On that, I would put that in a form as a stipulation.
Yes, sir.
Well, you got
Got a second?
I hope Christie's keeping up with
Yeah,
I
I'll
have a
second that.
motion.
Sure, there you go, I'll second that.
Can you repeat that last one? So I make
Sure.
I heard.
I write them down. Look, big letters. The drainage impact analysis to reflect proposed ordinance changes to Chapter 26 to include detention to 25-year design per this date. If that helps you.
I think I'm gonna have the motion. One motion with the stipulations, I guess.
Are y'all through with this?
Yes.
There was a question with my cohorts back here.
Okay.
On the truck access, it's right out only, but you can turn in as well, right?
Sure, oh, yeah.
All right.
We just want to make sure Ham Reed Road is not where they're coming from Lake and all that. And so, in the other industrial sites that we've worked with, they were more than accommodating and say, you know what, we are going to make them go to Goche and Nelson. It's great for us, it's better for y'all. So
No, that I'm fine with. I just want to make sure the neighborhood, they can take the first right in and get into the
Oh.
site as well. So that's,
Absolutely.
Mr.
Just
Crane.
Point of clarification, we're talking about the entrance exit that's closest to the roundabout to the west. That's
The
two-way. It's the next one.
yeah, exactly. So the one that's furthest to the east is going to be, you can only go right, but you can still go in.
In. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
How are you gonna do that?
I don't know, that's up to their engineer. I mean, if he can make it work engineering, I'm just saying, because I am going to be putting a no truck route on Ham Reed Road here in the next few weeks. So I might not,
I mean, here's a question back to you. I mean, could we just keep it full access and put a sign on it that says, no, trucks must turn right?
I'm in construction, I build these sites and stuff all the time, and yeah, the state, that don't work.
All right, you want a pork chop?
People are only as good as what they want to be.
Yes.
so.
Yeah.
You,
I'm good. He's okay with the pork chop.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll figure out a traffic control mechanism, whatever it is, where trucks can't go, when you can't go left out of that site.
That's all I'm worried about.
Engineering, we'll sit down and we'll go through the whole thing.
I just wanted to make sure that that was what you're talking about.
well, I'll end with this. I think it's gonna be great for the community. I think it's, I think what y'all are proposing is gonna be awesome. It's gonna be good for tax revenue, and I appreciate y'all working with us to make sure the development's gonna complement and work well. So I'm done and can't wait to see you get after it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other discussion?
Is there anything else?
Go ahead, Mr. Landry.
I feel great about it. I only got heartburn on one thing, and that's the walkways. If that's in there, I can't go with it. I'll go with everything else, but that isn't that big of a deal. They basically came here and got almost everything they asked for. I want the walkways. Did you already made that as a motion?
I didn't.
Oh, we didn't
you-
address
you
that.
You can address it now.
Go ahead, Ms.
I
Wallace.
just have-
I just want to remind everybody that we didn't discuss the street yard planning area. And if y'all are fine with that and we don't need any stipulations, then that's
I'm
fine.
good with it because I looked at it, but go ahead.
Do you still want to talk about the walkways first?
Sure, if you want to.
I'd like, can I
Yeah,
make a comment?
go ahead,
So,
Jason.
I hear what you're saying on the walkways. The problem with the walkways in these developments, and we actually just did one of these, and we ended up ripping it out, is when you have shopping carts and you're walking on brick or you're walking on those kind of things, it just shakes the cart the whole way down. And it's not really conducive to it. And you're putting in a lot of them, and you have a lot of car traffic. You have way more car traffic than you'd have on a typical medical or office component. And it ends up looking kind of beat up, and you get tire marks and oil spills on it. It doesn't look great. The reason we want to go with the painted sidewalk or crosswalk is because A, you can take a shopping cart over and it doesn't destroy your eggs, and B, you can paint it. And so you get a fresher, cleaner looking shopping center than you do if you have brick that you have to replace every 10 years.
Well, they'd sell more eggs.
You in the egg business?
I might want to be actually if we could get those walk paths put in there. No, okay, I mean, I understand that. I'm fine.
When you say painted, are you talking about dyed concrete or just paint?
We looked at some some of them, some of the more marquee ones, we'd maybe do some design elements with. But some of them are just in kind of no man's land that you just have pedestrian connectivity so people know how to navigate the shopping center. That would be just more your standard painted crosswalk because it's kind of out of the wind. So we'd kind of evaluate them and pick certain ones to do certain things with.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, just one.
Okay, good.
Thanks for working with us and us not chasing you off. I'm
No,
glad y'all
absolutely. You guys have
developing
been
here.
great,
I'm glad
man.
you're developing here under, what you're doing. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, if I could just review the three
yes.
motions
Go ahead, Ms. Wallace.
or three added stipulations, and just as a reminder, the only motion that y'all did so far was to discuss. So what Mr. Scott had proposed was that all outbuildings reflect the architectural integrity of the overlay district and must be approved by the director or review team if needed prior to permitting. That the eastern freight driveway is to be one-way only, right turn to the west.
It's not one way. That was a confusion. It's exiting one way, but it's still a two-way entry point.
To be a one-way exit? Would that
Yes.
clear it up? And
It's right in, right out.
right in, right out.
Oh, I see, yeah.
See what I mean? It's still a
Yeah, yeah.
two-way movement.
Right.
It's just,
Yeah, yeah.
you can only go right.
Yeah.
And then that the DIA will reflect the proposed ordinance changes to Chapter 26 as of today's date.
Okay, clarification on one thing. The trucks,
Yes.
the unloading trucks, okay, they go east. No, yeah, they go off Nelson east, and then when you come out, after they've unloaded, you come out to Ham Reed, you can only go west.
They can only go right. Yeah, they can only make a right turn. I guess.
I mean, yeah,
I
right,
just want
right.
to clarify, it's not one, it's a two-way intersection.
So
They
is
can only
that
just-
second
right.
entrance is only for deliveries, right?
No.
So there's not gonna be any car traffic can go
What,
left?
what he's gonna do, the vehicular traffic going westbound on Ham Reed will be able to take a right into that space.
Okay.
The vehicles leaving that space, if they choose that, including the trucks, will have to go right out. So it's a right in, right out configuration. Correct. Pork chop.
Do you actually think the state is gonna give you those two driveways that close together next to that brand-new roundabout? I know you're not the engineer or the state, but
Hope so.
I think that's gonna be tough. But anyway, that's our motion.
Okay,
Bo doesn't know yet.
huh?
The engineer doesn't know at this point. in time.
Okay, so I guess I need a motion to accept.
Motion to accept with all amendments that Jennifer just read.
Okay. And a second?
Second.
All right, go ahead.
You have some more? That's it?
No, well, the motion
What?
was made originally by Mr.
That was to
Scott.
discuss.
Okay, to discuss, and then your motion was.
To accept the
accept.
changes to the overlay district
And Mr. Porsche seconded.
that Jennifer just read.
Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Then that motion will carry.
Motion to
And
adjourn?
we'd,
And it also, just for clarification, it included what was already written here as well.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Just to make sure
Those were
we're-
added.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. We are adjourned.